Nick Ward with Ward Laboratories, and today we're going to be talking about nitrates in plants and the importance of that given the certain conditions that we find ourselves in this year with the drought. Now, I say plant nitrate or test nitrate in plant material. It's one single lab procedure, but we can apply it in two very different contexts. The first, and what we think from an agronomic standpoint, is a postseason or late season stock nitrate test, where we take a 8-inch segment of a corn stalk 6 inches above the ground, and we do that 3 weeks after black layer, and that is a way to assess how well we did with our nitrogen program for that growing season. So obviously, if you did a good job at applying the right amount of N and you had high efficiency with that nitrogen, you didn't overapply, you should generally have low values of the nitrate left in the stock. And then, so if you had over application, or in the case of this year where we have drought and we weren't able to use all that, we get this large accumulation of nitrate in the stock that we measure, and that is an indication that A, we did not do a good job from our nitrogen management, or B, there was some sort of plant stress there that caused some poor growth. We weren't able to use all the fuel we had in the tank, if you will, that year. So that is the stock nitrate test. Now, what is very different is a plant nitrate test, and this nitrate test is in material that's going to be fed to different types of livestock. And for that, we're going to have our animal scientist Rebecca Kern-Lunbery discuss that topic and how to sample for it. And that's the main thing I want people to focus on, is how she talks about sampling. We know we need to get a representative sample. That way we don't base all of our decisions on, is it okay to bale or ensile this cornfield, an 80-acre field on 5 plants out of one corner. That's not very good. So she's going to specifically go over that sampling procedure that will be very nice.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Kern-Lunbery, Ward Laboratories professional animal scientist, and today I'm going to talk to you about a lot of the common questions I've been getting about drought-stressed corn. And so right now we have a lot of producers who are testing their drought-stressed corn specifically for nitrates and trying to make some management decisions based off that. Are they going to be able to bale them into corn stalk bales? Are they going to be able to ensile them? Or are they going to need to ensile them, depending on what their report comes back? So the first thing I kind of go through with producers is proper sampling procedures. And so a lot of times people are like, well, I'm going to bale my corn stalks, so stock nitrate must be the test that I need to do. And actually that's a plant test used for agronomic purposes. So that's not actually what we want to do. What we want to do is represent what the cow is going to be consuming. And so if you have a cutting height, you're going to have a cutting height whether you're trying to ensile or if you're going to be baling. You want to adjust that as high as possible if you think you're going to be having issues with nitrates, and that's where you want to go through the field and take your sample at that height. If you're not sure and you want to compare and see if you can maybe get a little bit of extra yield, you can sample at a lower cutting height and the higher cutting height, and you can compare your results and see where those nitrate levels are. But for testing for baled corn stalks or determining if you're going to ensile, you really want to represent the whole plant, not just the stalks, because the leaves, the stems, whatever corn grain is going to be in there is all going to be part of that dilution factor that may or may not allow you to just straight up bale it or need to ensile it, which I'll get to that later. To take your sample, go out, choose your cutting height, determine if you're going to do comparative cutting height. You're going to want to take 20 plants from across your field, and you may even need to divide your field into different sections depending on, if you were going to have the ability to fence out. I've talked to some producers where they're on a pivot and the corners, they're worried about some cows going over there and really consuming a lot of those, that they might have higher nitrates than the rest of the field. So regardless of how you split that up, you want to go out, take 20 plants, chop them up into, we say 1 to 2 inch pieces. Just do your best. You can use plant shears to do this, or if you have a chipper shredder, you can sure use that. Then once you've got your pieces all cut up, then you want to mound them into a cone shape, and you're going to want to do this either on a large piece of paper, like really large, or a tarp or something like that, and then divvy it up into 4 quarters, and then you throw away the 2 opposing quarters and combine the other 2 remaining quarters, and do this until you get down to a gallon or a quart-size Ziploc bag, and that's what we want to be submitted to the lab for us to then do our mass reduction techniques and sample preparation in-house to test your sample. And that's going to be the best way to make sure you have a good representative sample of your field going to the lab to make the best possible decision. Now, if your nitrates come back high, you may decide that you want to ensile, and of course this is also going to depend how burnt up it is. Do you have the right moisture? And a lot of those leaves may be crispy, but your moisture may still come back at a good range to ensile because it's still moist inside those stalks. And I know as we get later into the season, that is going to be the case less and less. So testing earlier to make these decisions is going to be better. So a lot of people are actually testing right now. So if you do come back with a sample that's high in nitrate that you're not going to be able to feed, or you might not be able to feed at the rate you want, or you maybe don't have the ability to mix it at the rate that it needs to be mixed into a TMR, ensiling can be a really good option. Unfortunately, there's some misconceptions about ensiling. It does reduce nitrates, absolutely, typically by 20%. Optimistically, it can reduce the nitrates by up to 50, but it is not guaranteed at 50%. Unfortunately, I do hear from a lot of producers that they're anticipating that. Anticipate 20, hope for 50% reduction in those nitrates. So with that, I think that's all I had to share with you today.
Well, what are we going to do about nitrate for next year, I guess, is something that maybe we ought to think about. And this happened in 2012, that we really got lots of nitrate out of the soil, so to speak, in that drought year. And I think we're going to have the same situation this year. And so all fields ought to be really soil sampled for nitrate along with other nutrients in that 0 to 8 inch sample. And then from 8 to 24 or 8 to 36 inches for finding out what the carryover nitrate is in that root zone. Because we've had some really high nitrate samples after a drought year. And that means you can really cut back on nitrogen fertilizer next year. And if it's dry again, now you got to set your yield goal different. If it's going to be wet, you have a higher yield goal, but you have to start with how much residual nitrate in the soil. Now, in addition to that, if you do a soil health assessment test, we also can measure the mineralizable nitrogen that's going to come out of the organic matter for the year, and after a year like we had this year, then that organic nitrogen may be higher than normal. So I think it's really a way to evaluate how much you can cut back for nitrogen fertilizer next year.